The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are my own or those of my guests, and in no way represent the views of the company or companies that I or we work for. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they are told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast dedicated to the journey and the challenges surrounding the life and career of Aviator Tony and his guests. Together, we will explore the many pathways to an aviation profession, the realities of what a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, an airline pilot currently flying for a legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. This is episode 34 of Squawk Ident, recorded on the 24th of March, 2020, from the Aviator Sound Studios somewhere in Southern California. On this episode of Squawk Ident, I am so very happy to be joined by a dear friend here on Squawk Ident and my very first flight instructor, Captain Luca. He joins us from a mandatory quarantine in Vicenza, Italy. Also, for the first time together, I am joined by two of my fellow aviators and co-hosts here on Squawk Ident, Captain Roger and Rob D. We are going to catch up with Captain Luca and explore how his journey has flipped on a dime with the events surrounding this global pandemic. He has been in a countrywide mandatory lockdown at his home, where he has been spending time with his family. We are going to hear how they have all stayed sane while under quarantine, and we will explore how these events have affected his aviation career. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, right after a brief word from our sponsors. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I want to take this time to give a special thank you to Captain Nathan for spending the time with us on episode 33 of Squawk Ident. We enjoyed hearing all about Captain Nathan's journey in aviation and how promising the future of his career is bound to be. We discussed how the shifting tide of the industry has started to affect the varied sides of the airline and corporate operators in the U.S. thus far. In today's show, we will take a look at how Italy's aviation market is weathering this storm. Let's start off the show today by introducing an exceptional aviator. He joins us from his spectacular chateau in San Diego, California. He is a CFI II MEI flight instructor, a former Embraer 145 airline pilot, a King Air instructor, a Western Grape bird strike survivor, a captain at a corporate operator, and just a class act guy. Captain Roger. Roger, what have you been up to?
Well, not much. I think that like a lot of people in our country and around the world, there's not a whole lot going on. Most of my time these days has been homeschooling my two kids, actually. And, not so much flying, just being a teacher.
That is a very big challenge, my friend. A very big challenge. And have they been climbing the walls and driving you nuts?
Absolutely. It's kind of, I'm sure there might be some shaming involved in it, but the balancing with when you've got two kids, and mine are in elementary school age, they want to go outside and they want to play. Is that okay if they go outside? And some other kids, they're kept inside. They're not allowed to play. Some are. I think there's just a lot of questions, and we're just kind of, for lack of better terms, we're just kind of winging it right now.
Yeah, and at this point, we're not under the mandatory lockdown is just a recommended to stay in place, stay at home. Hashtag stay home, right? This is flooding the internet right now. But yeah, what we're doing is, every day we spend about 30 minutes and we get in the car. There are plenty of outdoor parks around here. They are not deserted, but they definitely have a lower traffic volume at the park than usual. And we walk for about 30 minutes just because we got to get oxygen to the brain and get off that mind control screen that the kids find themselves on. So yeah, my hat's off to you, Roger. It's tough, especially with kids at that age.
It is, but it's something that we're all going through, and I feel fortunate enough to that we're all healthy, and all things considered, the kids are happy, we're happy, and we'll get through this.
Yeah, for sure. And let's introduce our next co-host. We are very fortunate to be joined today from his estate home in Flower Mound, Texas. He is a former international and professional racquetball champion, a member of the 9G Club, an AMP and avionics tech as well, and currently a 737 pilot for a U.S. legacy carrier. Rob D., what the heck is going on with you?
Hey, what's going on, Tony? How's it going, Roger?
All right, how are you?
Oh, man. Probably the same way you are, just trying to keep the kids entertained and trying to get through this day by day.
Yeah, and Rob, our schedules, and we might be able to talk about this a little bit later, but our schedules are rapidly deteriorating in front of our very eyes, aren't they?
Oh, they sure are. I got a notification this morning that one of my flights have canceled. So I know what I need to do, but yeah, the things are changing rapidly. So gonna have to just make sure we fly by the book, and you know what I mean. just do our part and keep the company going.
Yeah, a lot of company emails about not violating sterile cockpit, being focused on the task at hand, acting and displaying the absolute professionalism during this time. I know everybody's topic of discussion has been what has been surrounding us completely in this industry, which is the coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease, and how it's really affecting all of our lives and every aspect of that. Today, I have, just been honored to have a guest returning to the show. We introduced him to Squawk Ident in episode 21. Back in January. He and I first met in the year 2000 when I had my first discovery flight, and thus began the birth of my journey in aviation. He was the first flight instructor that helped mold my passion for aviation. He holds type ratings in Fokker 27, a Fokker 50, and an ATR 72. He's currently living and working for an airline that we call Zulu Air here on the show. Joining us all the way from his home country in northern Italy, where he currently is under countrywide mandatory quarantine. We are going to discuss how he has been coping with it all and what it means for his journey looking ahead. Please help us in welcoming back to the show, Captain Luca. Luca, ciao.
Hi guys, hi Anthony.
How are you doing?
How are you guys? No, thank you for having me here. There is a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Last time we spoke was January 29th, and it was kind of before most of this virus situation was happening. And, we kind of talked about the future and your journey. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for talking to me about that. And I'm very honored to have you today to kind of get your perspective on what you're going through in Italy. How has everything been since last we spoke?
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here again, and thank you for having me here one more time. And life is like in the United States at the moment, except for the forced quarantine that we are experiencing. I'm a father of three, and also I'm teaching, I'm gardening, I'm trying to do everything that you guys are exactly doing the same way in the United States. The problem here that we had a lot of death, like you can hear on the news, and that's scary because this coronavirus looks like, first of all, it's very contagious, and it is spreading very quickly. Looks like around Europe, around all the countries, basically all around the world, I guess. And second is because we don't have a cure yet. So that's the only way. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just repeating what people are saying here on the news. The only way to fight against this virus is to stay away from it. And the quarantine is the only method they found until now to fight against this stuff. And I'm at home as well, in sense meaning that I'm not flying. Last flight I had was I think was the 29th of February. So it's not too long ago, but about a month almost.
Yeah. And how's your family coping with all this time that you have?
Yeah, she just bring me a cup of tea, so she's doing very well.
Excellent, excellent.
Hey, hold on. Where's my wife? Hey, honey. Shake a leg, woman.
You don't have the little bell or the buzzer?
Ma.
Here we go.
Ma, meatloaf.
Now you're showing your.
Doing? God.
Rob, you wish.
You're on the side.
Oh
Sorry.
my God.
Distraction. Go ahead.
I think you might need to apologize to her, not to us.
She just poked her head in the door.
I believe that. Did you get the look?
Some eye daggers. I was like, sorry.
She comes in like,
just for entertainment, honey.
Yeah. Looks like I'm cooking dinner. Okay.
Well, we need a good laugh, anyway.
yes, thank you guys. I mean,
I guess,
this is what we need more of. I mean, I've told the girls here at home,
Exactly.
turn the TV. We're not talking about news. I know, and my wife, she's like, okay, turn that off. We're not talking about this. We're not talking about that, and we're really trying to mold how we control the tone and the attitude in the house, because all this stuff is going outside of the house, and in the house, this is the drama-free zone right here. So all the drama is outside. Now, I've had to adjust how I come. I'm still flying, as you may know. A lot of it's been canceled, especially all the Hawaii stuff because of the mandatory quarantine there. And they've decided, at least at Legacy Airlines, they've decided to only allow the 777 to fly in and out of two of the islands, which is Honolulu and Maui. So all the narrow body stuff, which is what I'm on, the 321, is going to be canceled sporadically throughout the near future until we kind of recuperate from all this, which is anybody's guess to when that's going to be. So they started canceling all this stuff, and now I come home and Julie says, okay, there's a table in the garage. You will strip in the garage, come in, take a shower, no shoes, no clothes, no jacket, no uniform, no suitcase, nothing's allowed in the house. And we have a little quarantine area. The only thing that's missing is the spray of the alcohol solution before I walk in the house, the quarantine zone, you are free from contaminants, but that is now the new norm. And it's kind of scary, to have to deal with all this. So when we are at home, when we are together, other than the occasional film that we're watching, just to kind of help make light of how serious this contagion event is in the world. We watch movies that have to do with contagious diseases. I think we just watched Mission Impossible 2 the other day with the coronavirus, how Ethan Hunt saves the day at the last second, so, we have that going on. But for the most part, we're a corona-free household in terms of the news.
Nice.
So, yeah. But, Luca, it sounds like you're doing very well with having to be at home, and you have plenty of space to roam, thankfully. My cousin in Rome is scared to leave the house. My uncle is got the respirator mask and the gloves and the goggles, and if he has to go to the store to buy food, he looks like he's in a hazmat suit because he's very, very scared, especially downtown Rome. Everyone's stacked on top of each other. It's scary.
Yeah. Normally we decided that my wife, she's gonna go to the supermarket. We normally shop once a week at the moment, once or twice a week maximum, I guess. So I try to avoid her to go out too often. I mean,
yeah.
But we are using the same method. We use the dust mask and a respiratory mask. I don't know how you call it. I know there is a code FFP2 or 3. This is the minimum filtration that you can use. Any kind of mask, but it has to have at least that kind of a filtration coefficient. And she's using gloves as well. And when she comes home, washes everything, and like basically what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's pretty scary because we don't know really the future of it, how it is going to develop, and how bad will affect everybody. That's the scary part for me, and also because we are trying to do our best, and I hope everybody's doing their best in their own house, in their own way, to protect themselves and the others and the people surrounding them.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very, very lucky to live in a countryside. Normally, I would say, no, I have plenty of work to do, so I'm really, really not that lucky man because I live in a countryside. But at the moment, yes, I'm really happy to be here because I have enough space to go running around, jogging with my dog, and in my fields around, and I spend my time in that way.
Yeah.
If I was stuck in a flat, well, the life would be much different for me. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I was speaking with my uncle Marcello. He's in Monte Rotondo. It's just east of I think of Rome, I want to say, or maybe I have that wrong. I'm not sure, but he's outside of Rome to the east and lives in the countryside. And for him, I mean, he's up there in age, but he's got acreage of land and fruit trees and gardens and things, so he has enough to keep him busy. Yeah, like you, he's in good shape. His closest neighbor is hundreds of meters away. So thankfully he's in an area especially at his age where he's not in a flat like you said. Because that can be very daunting. So when this whole, you decided to pull yourself out, you said a little bit ahead of the mandatory lockdown. How did that happen?
Because we started hearing the spreading of the disease in another area of Italy. They started in a place, it's called I forgot. Vo Padovano, I think, is a little town south of Padova, which is approximately 35 minutes driving from here. And that was considered red zone right away. And that was probably middle of February. So when I came back from my last flight, I actually went to the simulator. So I don't consider that a flight. And then I will tell you the story about the simulator because it was another story that I want to. Yeah. And I came back, and then the school, they said, okay, the next day was going to close. They were going to close. So they said, okay, we lock ourselves in, pretty much lock in. In the sense that we were still walking around without masks, but with the idea on the back of our head that we had to be careful. And so staying away from the people, staying away from the closest relatives, especially the older ones, and so on. My wife was the first one actually to agree with that, and we explained the kids what we were going to do. And at the beginning, they were not believing it. They were not and probably not understanding the severity of this.
Yeah.
And then now, actually, they are taking care of it so as well. So they wash their hands a little bit more thorough, and yeah, I think our behavior, our future will change after this for sure a little bit.
Yeah.
It's affecting everybody.
Yeah. Well, so how did you get out of work? Did they just say, okay, well, you want to quarantine at home, and they pulled you off of flying, or how did that work?
Oh yeah, after my last flight, I came home for 2 days, and then I was supposed to go to Amsterdam for my simulator, and so I went to Amsterdam, no problem till that time, and that was the 2nd of March. The same day I arrived in Amsterdam, I was supposed to do the sim session at night. So it was 8 o'clock, approximately, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. The TRE, my colleague and I, we took the bus to the taxi to go to the sim. We entered the sim, and in the sim you have to register when you enter, and it shows the system will ask you the nationality. So myself and the TRI and the TRE are Italian, and so we put Italian, and so a big red flag came on, and the lady at the front desk said, "Where are you from?" So we said, "We're from Italy." And but you just arrived from Italy? Yes, I said, "We're coming from Venice." And Venice, again, is not too far away from this red zone that I was telling you before.
Yeah.
And so the lady said, "Sorry, but we are not accepting Italians anymore." And I said, "What? What does it mean?" You know. So we asked for the supervisor, and he came down with the A4 size piece of paper, which was saying Chinese, South Korean, and Italians are not allowed to enter CAE facilities except in Rome and Milan, which are, of course, in Italy. And basically, they kick us out from that place. And we were complaining because they said, you should have told us before, so the company didn't spend all this money to send us from our country to Holland and blah, blah, blah. And they said, but this was a decision that was made this morning. So everything was at the last minute. So it was a very short notice decision. We went back to the hotel. We spoke with the company. We told them our problem. They organized another different simulator in Vienna, in Austria. So we flew to Austria. We did 3 days later. We did our simulator and 2 days of simulator, of course. And then was the day to come back, And the first flight to Germany, actually, the first 2 flights to Germany were canceled for me, going back to Italy. So I had to postpone the departure again. And then I found a flight from Frankfurt back to Italy at the last minute, and I was able to take that one. So I came back home, and the next day, basically, they closed all the flights into Venice.
Oh.
And so I was lucky to come back home. And the company at that moment were still reluctant, let's say, to say, okay, you stay home completely. And they scheduled me for recurrent training, I think was in Zurich, the week after. But then after a day or two, we showed them. I called the company. The owner of the company is also half Italian, half Swiss, and they said, okay, don't worry, stay home for the moment. Follow your country regulations and rules that come out, and so. Company-wise, they have no problem. For the moment, we're still flying in the Northern Europe and still active with using the pilots that we have. The colleagues are very, very keen to help, of course, during this time. People that are, instead of, normally we fly 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, but they, of course, agree that during this time they will fly only, for as long as the regulation permit allows them to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things about this is just how quick things are changing, especially in smaller continents like Europe, where your countries are more like our states, and every single country has different rules and regulations about entering the country and exiting the country and who's allowed and when it's allowed. And kind of in your case, I mean, that can change while you're in flight or the morning of, and everything just changes so fast. I get email after email after email about, we obviously have Canada and Mexico. Well, okay, we're going to stop all non-essential to Canada, and Mexico's kind of a quasi should we go or should we not. I actually had the opportunity to go down to Mexico this week, which I canned personally for that reasons, because I don't want to end up getting stuck somewhere, because in your case, again, when you were trying to come home, it's such a challenge with everything changing on an hourly basis, if not even daily.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it is challenging for that reason. It's challenging for the companies as well. I mean, the company I'm flying for, it's a kind of a family. We are basically 60 pilots, and that's it basically at the moment. So it's very tiny. But the business, because we are flying cargo, is still going, it's still working. So for the moment, they need us to be on the line and to keep going. The problem, because we are based at home, and then the company will move us to wherever we have the job going, or wherever the aircraft are based, becomes a problem, because we cannot find. I told the company now that I can drive, but I have to drive probably for 3 days to reach my base. So I will be crazy. So, but it's difficult. It's difficult, and I really hope that the company will survive for that, because it's difficult.
If you do drive in a situation like that, would they stop you at the border?
Yeah, in some of the countries, yes. The moment for example, the non-essential trips, non-essential jobs. So our job is considered essential at the moment. Mm-hmm. So we will be able to drive through countries, because I carry with me a document which is kind of stupid, really, document, but this is what they come up with. It's a self evaluation document. Let's say is an undersigned by myself document where I state that I'm healthy and I haven't had any fever or any symptoms related to, let's say, coronavirus.
Right.
And that document goes together with the document from the company, which states that I have to go and drive to that particular place for work. With those two documents, I'm supposed to be able to drive through all Europe at the moment. But like we were saying before, the thing can change daily or hourly. And some countries, for example, Holland and Denmark, they are not allowing anybody to come in, for example. So I don't know at what level, if really is anybody together with maybe the commercial trucks and stuff like this, or just tourist. I'm not really sure about the others.
Yeah. Yeah. Here, the world is watching Italy right now, because Italy has surpassed China in terms of the number of people that have died from COVID-19. And, now here in America, every day, hour by hour, we're getting new restrictions, new lockdowns. Each municipality, each state is going through their, increased level of isolation for its residents. And here in America, flight crew are also considered essential services for now. And what has developed here in the last 48 hours is the travel from the mainland to Hawaii. I was in Honolulu the other day and on a layover, and again, they're asking all residents to go into a voluntary lockdown, if you will, a self-quarantine. All the stores that were non-essential were all shuttered. And the only thing that was open was the drugstores, the grocery stores, and the restaurants, but only for takeout or delivery. So whenever you'd go into a restaurant, they wouldn't even let you in the building. They had some tables at the front door, and you could order food and take it home with you, or you can order for delivery, one of these delivery services. And while I was out there, the governor announced that Hawaii was going to put a travel restriction on all incoming residents and visitors to Hawaii starting Thursday at 12:01 a.m. And that restriction is a 14-day mandatory quarantine. So if you're traveling to Hawaii as of Thursday at 12:01 a.m., you will be required, if you're a visitor, to stay in your hotel for 14 days. Or stay in your home if you're a resident for 14 days. And if you are caught outside of that property, it is a up to $5,000 fine and up to 1 year in imprisonment. Now, flight crew are exempt from this rule. However, the TSA will check the temperature of all incoming flight crew members. Any crew member over the temperature of 100.4 degrees will be then required to be under a mandatory quarantine. So if you land and you're running a fever, 14 days, you're done. The only way you can get out of that is to leave the state. So if you are under a 14-day quarantine and you decide, this isn't for me, I'm going to go back to the mainland, you are then allowed to make the appropriate reservations, go back to the airport, get back on an airplane and get out of there, which, only if you're not running a fever or symptomatic. So Hawaii was the first. And Rob, were you telling me that there's another state that is also following suit?
Yeah, that's correct, Tony. This morning I was chatting with a friend of mine who's in New Orleans, and he works out on the oil rigs out there in the Gulf there, and he was getting ready to make his way up to Rhode Island, which is where I'm from. And so he'd fly naturally into Providence's T.F. Green Airport. And he was saying that the governor or the mayor had put pretty much the same restrictions on travelers as Hawaii did, meaning that anybody traveling internationally or domestically would be put under a 14-day, and in this case, a self-imposed quarantine rule. And I was looking it up. I actually went to the airport's website, and it only mentioned international travelers. And I had to dig a little deeper and actually go to the Rhode Island government. Went to the governor, and then, of course, on their page, it said that all international and domestic travelers traveling into the state by air is a 14-day self-quarantine. I'm not sure, what the technical difference of that is, other than mandatory. But anyway, yeah, it sounds like it's getting this. It's the same thing.
Yeah, self-quarantine. Yeah. Even in Hawaii, it's a self-quarantine. They're not going to put you somewhere. You're responsible. In the notice that I read, you are responsible for the financial responsibilities of quarantining yourself. So it's just that if you get caught on the street, I don't know how they're going to figure that out. But I mean, in Honolulu the other day, I went for a run because you are allowed to do what it's considered solo exercise. You can do that as long as you're 6 feet away from someone, which we were having a discussion the other day. It's like, okay, so you and the family get in the car, you're all, a couple inches from each other, and you drive to the park, and now you're 6 feet apart while you're walking, and then you get back in the car, and, but a family is considered a group. So, it's, you're considered one entity. But like, if you, go pick up your buddy down the street, you got to stay 6 feet from them. I also saw a very good photo of all the dads in the cul-de-sac out front. It was just right out of King of the Hill, man. They were all drinking beers out front, talking, and they were all minimum 6 feet away from each other in a big circle, drinking beer. And
that's hilarious.
Hey, if you're going to quarantine, that's the way to do it. But
there's some similar situations like that going on in my town. we're really close to our a high school here, which obviously has a lot of high school sports stuff outdoors, and there's a lot of families and dads that got their Texas trucks backed up to each other 6 feet apart, tailgate down, and they're just sitting there sipping a drink and chit-chatting 6 feet apart. It's quite hysterical. There was like 3 or 4 groups of those around the parking lot going on, so it was quite comical just to see it happening.
It's the dads of Walmart or dads of Target.
That's it.
The dads of Target, is that what it is? Yeah. YouTube that. Dads of
Actually,
Target.
I have a question for Luca, and forgive me for my ignorance. I don't travel out of the country too much, and I'm not familiar with your particular situation. But I notice obviously you have a beautiful property out there on the countryside, and I'm just curious because I live in a suburb of Dallas, and when we have to stock up on supplies and stuff, we go to the local grocery store and stuff like that. I'm not familiar. How are you guys doing stuff like that? I mean, you obviously have to have a food supply, drink supply. What do you guys just go to the local grocery store also and get meats and eggs and all that stuff? Or are you guys kind of growing it in your garden, or if you have chickens out in the backyard? I mean, I'm clueless. Help me out.
Yeah, no, I know, it's okay. No, again, I'm lucky because I have some backyard, some land on the back, and I have a friend of mine, a guy that lives next door, which has he asked me a piece of land here to put some chicken in it. So we have eggs and chickens and ducks actually running around the backyard, which can help in a crisis situation. Normally we have about 200 yards away there is the first grocery store, which is has everything. At the moment there is a line because also the government said that, of course, the distance of 1 meter is the minimum. 1 yard is the minimum between people. So what they came up with is that they will restrict the number of people entering the grocery stores. In that way, it's not too crowded and they don't spread the disease in that way. But we're still receiving all the food. We still have everything. So there is not a big rush. Of course, in the major cities, like Milan, we noticed that a lot of people are, running with the fear of not having food. But seriously, this is not the case. I don't think we will end up in that direction. That's for sure.
So you have toilet paper.
Yeah. I was just gonna ask.
Miles and miles.
And I know, Luca, I think you saw that photo I posted on the social media there of the empty shelves in the grocery store. Every grocery store right now in this country has empty. The only thing you're going to find is mustard and ketchup. And there's a line around Costco every single morning with hundreds of people 6 feet apart waiting in line starting at 5:30 in the morning. And I have friends at Costco that tell me all day long because they only let about 20 to 25 people in the store at a time. So the store inside is empty.
Same.
But they're run out of all the, like, I wanted to buy isopropyl alcohol, 75% isopropyl alcohol combined with aloe vera gel. You make your own hand sanitizer. Okay. And it's actually cheaper than Purell. And you can make it a little stronger. And no, you can't buy isopropyl alcohol to save your life. The shelves are empty. The toilet paper, we had to use some connections that we have.
Every day you will have that. I mean, every day is like this, or
it's been like this.
Not there anymore.
Well, what happens is they stock the shelves, and then within a few minutes, the people that see it on the shelf, they grab it, and it's there's video after video after video of this on the internet of people, pushing each other and shoving each other just to get toilet paper, because I guess when you're nervous, you get the shits. I don't know. I don't get it.
It's the same situation here in Texas. It's the grocery stores will stock the shelves overnight, and by 7 o'clock in the morning, they're out because people line up outside to get those supplies. Yeah. So if you're not up at 7 o'clock in the morning and in line waiting at the door when they open, and it's funny because the other day. I got to the store about 10 minutes prior to the store opening, and we were all in line, at the same time, waiting to get in. And as soon as the door opened up, every single one of us, and I got to tell you, there's probably 20 of us, we all took the same exact path through the store. And we all went to the same spot, the same aisle, to the same. Yeah, we all hands were at the same shelf at the same time, getting, the same supply. And within 10 minutes, we were all out the door with what we needed, and that was it.
The items
this
that
starts kind of getting into the psychology of people. It was like, I mean, do we really need toilet paper to protect ourselves or to cure ourselves of COVID-19? But when you see everybody else goes out there, then that panic or that fear of, well, if everybody else is doing it, then I better grab this toilet paper, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with anything that's going on. And this infection is exposing so much about every facet of life, from psychology to government, politics. It's really just unbelievable. And like Luca had said, in the end, I don't think that there's going to be, and I'm glad to hear that in Italy as well, I don't think that we really have any problems keeping toilet paper, necessarily in stock if people were exhibiting normal behavior or any other kind of food item, or whether it's hand sanitizer, food items, or any other supply. It's just the psychology of the situation where people see everybody else panicking, and so we panic as well. And now we're left with empty store shelves in your local Walmart, supermarket, grocer, or whatever it happens to be. It's in a sad way fascinating at the same time, where hopefully we're going to learn a lot about all kinds of stuff about how to better be prepared for something like this when this does happen again, because it will.
Yeah. And, I was watching this video on the 10 things that the film Contagion got right. And in there's a scene where people are in the pharmacy and they're saying, okay, the medication, we're out of this, medication for this virus. And the people went crazy and they started filling their baskets with Purell and all this stuff, that this is, when was this film out? Like 2005? I mean, this is a while ago. And we are kind of following the same kind of psychosis of I've panic shopping and panic
there's
buying.
That saying about if you want to see what the future's like, just look at Hollywood, because they're making movies all the time and coming up with these creative things. And you look like if that film and there's actually any number of films that have been made in the past 15 to 20 years that exhibit a whole lot about what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So if you want to know what's going to happen in 20 years, I guess we can just look to see what they're making right now, right?
Yeah.
Or at least after they end their shutdown.
For sure. So what's the next one going to be? What's the next big thing? And we talked about this in the last episode. Bill Gates put on a TED Talk back in 2015 talking about how, the world is the next big global war. It has nothing to do with missiles or nuclear bombs. His generation.
Was one of Bill Gates' big things about clean water and virus, about a pandemic, and about how, if you want to look to see what the greatest threat to the world is a virus, and that was 5 and even 10 years ago.
How unprepared we are as well.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, we're very unprepared, not just with the goods and services, but financially as well.
No. But not only that, with our brain as well. I think the way of thinking, as well. Because
you're so
you
true.
cannot think about you cannot think about to not hug a person. For me, it's I cannot think
culturally ingrained.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same with shaking hands.
Yeah, exactly. It also surprises me that, the virus started in China, obviously months ago. And as it grew and it spread, it surprises me, here you're talking about the thinking, the psyche, that, in the United States now we're suffering from, lack of supplies and bed space. They didn't have the testing kits available, and that was a big thing. Why didn't anybody think about that, 2 months ago when this thing was growing, and have all that stuff ready to go? I mean, this is something that, should have been, disaster preparedness kind of thing. There was no planning at all.
At the same time, in terms of the recovery from that, look at Hanes. They've stopped producing underwear, and now they're using their cotton material fabrics to produce face masks for first responders in hospitals. We're going back to World War II and Rosie the Riveter here. We've got Tesla has mass produced, what was it, last I read, over 400 ventilators or more than that. They're now, I saw now hiring. They're hiring people in their facilities to mass produce ventilators and get them distributed around the world. Ford and GM have also joined the fight to start producing all kinds of medical equipment so that we can make sure we do not run out of the critical ventilators that is actually the most critical medical equipment right now for this virus. And here at Legacy Airlines, Rob and I have been keeping a very close eye in the past 24 hours because as of Monday morning, the company, in an effort to stave off having to furlough, having to make drastic employee cuts to the system in order to survive and not have financial ruin upon them, they have decided to create a couple options for at least their pilot group. One is a early retirement. So anyone over the age of 62 years old can opt out for early retirement, and in return, the company will give them 50 hours of pay credit every month until their 65th birthday. As of this morning, I saw that the union that is at Legacy Airlines has anticipated about 500 people taking that early out, which is going to help not furlough the junior pilots. A second option is there are temporary leaves of absence. The temporary leaves of absence are unpaid. So if you're able to take a 30 or 60 day leave of absence unpaid, you can do that and try to help save jobs, save the opportunity to furlough. Now, if the country goes into a countrywide domestic travel ban, which has been on the table. However, right now, President Trump is really fighting against that because he feels that will be the last kind of final blow to the economic strength of the country. And so he's really trying not to go that route. However, if the numbers start to mimic what the Italian numbers have been, with this exponential growth of the virus spreading, then that is going to have to happen, especially if the hospital beds become limited or ventilators become limited. So they're trying to prevent that. However, that is a possibility. Also, the stimulus package that the Congress is trying to get passed here, which is currently a bipartisan nightmare, because all of this information that's coming out where the Democrats versus the Republicans and they're blocking this and that. They don't want to bail out the airlines and give them the 0% loan because they feel they don't deserve it and taxpayer money. And so depending on what side of the aisle you are, that's another issue. So since I have you on the show here, Luca, how does the compensation for an Italian airline pilot work now that you're all under lockdown? Are you guys still getting paid, or is this an unpaid time in your life? How does that work?
Well, in my case, I live in Italy, but I work for a foreign country company, which is Switzerland. So that one, for a moment, as I told you before, we have no issues, no problems. So at the moment, we're still everybody employed, and the thing goes on regularly. And we expect to be paid, what is it today, the 23rd, is it? In a couple of days, we're supposed to have our salary. So I will let you know in a couple of days that they will pay regularly. But this is how it's supposed to be. I was talking to ex-colleague of mine from Ireland, for example, and they are receiving approximately, I think they are entitled of 200 euros, which is approximately $200, let's say, per week for the next 3 months to fight against this one, especially the people that are going to be, off work and offline. Mm-hmm. So those are the only two real numbers that I know. In Italy itself, I really don't know. I know Alitalia is keep flying with the with a big reduction of the fleet. They have a social system here where they will call the Cassa Integrazione, which is basically money that comes from the government to pay approximately 80% of the normal salary of every employee. Sorry, and that one, but I'm not sure for how long is going to be that one. It could be long years as well. Depends how much money they have in as a reserve, let's say. I know the European community decided to give unlimited amount of money to the Italian government or the rest of Europe as well. But I don't know what the unlimited amount of money means, because there must be a limit somewhere, somehow. But there are still, everything is in progress, because they are debating, they are discussing, but we don't have a clear idea what's going on with everything, not only the aviation field, but with the iron factories, for example. That's a big deal, because they're still working. Doctors, they're working in a hospital as well, over times and so on. They have to be paid as well, extra time, extra duty, and so. So we really don't know. I'm unprepared to answer this question at the moment.
Yeah. Is your airline still flying a full schedule, or have they cut back any of the flights? Because I know here I saw a thing with the FedEx CEO. I think that this was the last week, which makes it old news in today's world. But I guess from a cargo standpoint, it sounds like because it is so essential, it's still moving. Has your company seen any cutbacks in flights?
No, that's a good thing, let's say, but hopefully they're gonna be able to maintain this rhythm. For the moment, we didn't cancel any flight. We have 15 aircraft flying around Europe, and with major contracts like with the Post in Sweden, for example. And for the moment, because of this kind of contract, which are, let's say, special contracts, we didn't have any cutbacks, and luckily. But again, like I said, because it's difficult to move around Europe now, I have to position our pilots around, or our technicians around Europe is a major problem at the moment. So I don't know for how long we can keep going at that.
Sure.
Yeah. And do you have any friends that are flying for Italian Airlines, or just flying out there in general, and how has it affected them?
Yeah, well, for example, I have a 777 captain from Emirates, not in Italy, but in Dubai. And he told me that they cut down all the destinations to Europe, a lot, not all of them, but a lot of them. The only flights that are regular are towards Australia at the moment, for what I have. Other friends in Ireland, where I used to live before on the Isle of Man, they are at a dead end at the moment. Everybody is at home. Nobody's flying anymore. Especially that particular little island over there called the Isle of Man is isolated at the moment. It's very sad, but like before you were talking about Honolulu and Hawaii, and I think it's easier for us to control the spread of disease because, of course, the geographical location. So this little island where I worked for the last 4 years is also isolated. And that the Isle of Man, for people that don't know, is between Ireland and UK. So what I was telling my kids yesterday, it was a beautiful day and no aircraft lines in the sky, zero, no one,
not a single chemtrail.
I don't know in the United States, but here Exactly. So it was kind of a strange view, let's say.
Yeah.
Blue sky with no trail.
And that's hit the news here in the U.S. quite hard. Is all the canals in Venice are now, the water is clear. You can see the bottom, no pollution.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of
Pollution-wise, we're the greenest country in the world, bro. No.
Yeah, and that's really also creating quite the debate here, saying that all these people that have been saying global warming and pollution is all bull crap, and here we are only a couple weeks with a quarantine and a shutdown, and we're seeing wild animals in downtown Rome and in Venice and in Milan, and we're seeing dolphins off the coast of Italy that are coming closer and closer. Yeah. They haven't done that in years. And so this is creating quite an eye-opening debate for the future. And when we all get back to whatever normalcy will be after this whole thing is passed, hopefully either with a cure or something, this is really going to start opening doors for the environmental community, I think, as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So the quarantine in Italy was supposed to be lifted yesterday. It was a 2-week quarantine, and you're still under lockdown. What have they been telling you?
Exactly. This is, the quarantine that we never had a news saying that the quarantine will end that particular day. No, they kept saying we stay inside, locked in, quarantine for an undefined period of time. The problem here is that if I do quarantine 2 weeks, but my neighbor is not doing it, the quarantine will be postponed until this neighbor will stay locked in. Wow. And if you multiply this one for 60 million people, it will never end. Right. If that's why at the beginning we were saying about the difference between the political structure of China and Italy, where you can lock down everybody in the same moment. You can draw a line and say, okay, we start from scratch, we start from zero, our quarantine will start today and we land in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But if you allow people to move around anyway, because of the freedom of this country, is you cannot control it that easily. It's much more difficult. So the quarantine will not end until they found a disease control could be whatever a cure for it, and that the quarantine can end. From my point of view, at least. I don't know if I'm wrong, but hopefully I'm wrong.
So this could take months, if not longer, to kind of get back to normal. Really, everything is coming up and riding on a vaccine, which I don't know if you're getting the same news that we are, but somewhere here in the United States, over in the Northwest, in the Washington state, they did try a human trial on a vaccine. Now, as we mentioned earlier, there always tends to be how art imitates life with Hollywood movies. And if anyone's seen the movie I Am Legend, rushing a vaccine could be disastrous, a zombie apocalypse, and we obviously don't want that. So, well,
to support this, I read an article last week, and they were saying a 75 years old gentleman from Genoa area, which is the northwest of Italy, was cured by a vaccine produced in Washington. So that we're probably talking about the same thing. But this is only one case, and he accepted to be treated, and he's at home now, apparently.
So we're talking about, these quarantines and how America is really starting to catch up to the rest of the world. And Rob, you have some information on that just in, don't you?
I do. I just read that this is just a recent announcement, and it pertains to travel to Florida, the state of Florida. The state of Florida has issued an order that impacts customers who arrive in the state via nonstop flight from Connecticut, New York, or New Jersey. In accordance with this order, customers will be required to fill out a declaration form and may be screened by Florida health officials upon arrival of their nonstop flight. Customers will also be required to self-quarantine for 14 days from the time of arrival or for the duration of their trip to the state, whichever is shorter. Let's see, this goes on to state that a company they call American has nonstop flights to 3 airports in Florida, Miami, Orlando, and West Palm Beach, from four airports in these affected states: Connecticut, which is Bradley; New York, which is JFK and LaGuardia; and New Jersey, which is Newark. According to the order, airline employees, along with military, emergency, or health response personnel, are not affected. If you're an airline employee, you just have to have your valid ID with you.
Yeah.
So that's just in.
So yeah, this is all in relation to the Florida beaches being overrun during this voluntary isolation period with spring breakers, college kids that said, well, I'm not going to let this virus get in the way of my fun. This from, what are we looking at? ABC News a couple days ago, they talked a little bit about this issue.
Joining us now by phone, Florida Senator Rick Scott, who was, of course, also governor there for 8 years. Senator, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Well, it's pretty disappointing, isn't it? These people are irresponsible, they're stupid, they're selfish. We're all in this together, and we got to take care of each other, and they're not. So these people need to get off the beach unless they can go. There's probably times where the beach isn't busy. Maybe you can go then, but get off the beach.
Senator Rick Scott, I think, hit the nail on the head with that one. This young people, I think, they think, oh, well, it's just the flu. And actually the common flu kills more people than this thing has. So, yeah, spring break, you can't tell me I'm not going to be able to go out and have some fun. And this is like, Luca, like what you were saying, unless everyone is on board, this is going to continue to spread. And if it continues to spread, we're going to continue on this lockdown. And if we do that, the economic implications here are going to be disastrous, not just for, the U.S., but the entire world.
I got an idea for the governor.
Yeah.
Let them have their spring break.
Oh.
Why don't we just quarantine them down there on the beach? Let them stay there. There's beer. I'm sure there's plenty of Taco Bell to go around. Just keep them there until all this is over.
And when you run out of toilet paper, just wear it. Depends.
Exactly.
There's adult diapers. They do the job. Hey, unfortunately, what are they going to do with those diapers? They're going to leave them on the beach, and then who's going to clean that up? Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know about that, Rob.
Well, at least it'll be contained to one area, and we'll know where all the new virus comes from, if you know what I'm saying.
Alcatraz is a very nice place to put people that, are not obeying the the law.
Yeah, if I can say something about this, is that we are having the same problem in Italy with the young guys. Of course, I mean, we all been young, right? Probably I'm the oldest one between us four. But the problem is that they don't think that they can affect the rest of their family. That's the problem. So they can bring the coronavirus in the house. And they will probably don't show any symptom about that because they're young and strong and everything else. But they will kill, basically, their mother, their father, their grandmother, and so on. The way it is the only way they should think. Will they really want to kill part of my family? Taking the virus in the house like this? That if they don't realize that, they will keep doing stupid thing like this. That is an enemy that we don't. The only thing we know looks like is that it's very contagious, and apparently it doesn't affect young people, but affects very badly. People with some previous problems, and also
Yeah. And I was reading an article
Yep.
recently about why the death toll has been so high in Italy versus some of the other countries. And the article mentioned that a lot of it has to do with what you were mentioning earlier, Luca, is the cultural norm of when you meet somebody or you get together with someone, family, friends, coworkers, you have this culture that gives each other a kiss on the cheek to say hello as a greeting. It's a very warm and kind, loving cultural norm. And this is how they feel that the virus spread rapidly. However, the reason the death toll has been so high is because that you have a culture where smokers are a little bit more common in the Italian culture. That way of life of, you live a good life, you have good food, good friends, good family, good love. And so, yeah, smoking and drinking and having a good time, it's ingrained in the culture. I mean, that's where I get the best wine in the world, And so to have that culture, to have that smoking be kind of a normal thing, where here in the US, smoking has really become a taboo. Do you think that that's a good contributor to it in your opinion?
No, I have to disagree with you this time because it's been a very big taboo in Italy as well, especially in the northern Italy, let's say. I was reading another article, again, maybe it's propaganda, maybe it's not, I'm not really sure, but makes sense, which the reason for this high number of deaths recorded here is only because we are doing 100% of tests to everyone that goes into the hospital with fever, with symptoms that can be related to coronavirus. At least this is what they're saying on TV. They said that we are testing every single one that goes into the hospital. And not only, also on the street. They do that test with the, picking the nose, the bacteria, and they test you if you're driving around. I know that this is not the policy, for example, of France, and for sure not the UK. They're not doing that. They do only test if they have a certain level of symptoms which are not related to, could be not related to coronavirus as well. But so it's also different policy. I don't know who to believe at this point. I think probably a little bit of everything. They were saying also. You said about the tobacco, about the smoking. I was reading about the pollution as well. The pollution itself, the particles in the air, can carry the virus around. So in cities where the pollution is very high, can be the spread can be much easier than in a countryside. Let's say in the middle of Canada, in the forest like this, probably will not spread as bad as in the city. So I don't know. It's probably is a little bit of everything.
I think that a part of it also comes into the demographics of northern Italy, is that just as a whole, a larger amount of the population is a little bit older. And I think that it's not so much about the spread. I mean, you guys can talk about all that in terms of the spread of it. But then when you're looking at just, the unfortunate amount of deaths per capita is going to be a lot of it just because the demographics of the population is just older. And because this virus does seem to have a disproportionately larger effect on that population. I think that's why you're getting a lot more of the, a higher mortality rate than a lot of other places. It's just because the demographics, not because of a cultural thing, not necessarily because of a smoking thing or what, the population density, because all that will affect how easily it spreads. But just from a mortality rate, the older a population is, I think you're going to see the numbers are just going to be a little bit worse, unfortunately.
Yeah. And according to an article from ABC News dated March 23rd by Dana Schaefer, entitled "What U.S. Can Learn from Italy About Responding to the Coronavirus," a new phase of the novel coronavirus has started. Cities shut down, workers sent home, schools canceled, and so much uncertainty with the economy. There are more questions than answers right now, and the United States seems to be the one of the last to feel the brunt of the corona or COVID-19 pandemic. In Italy, the death toll has now surpassed that of China for the most in the world. ABC News' Megan Williams has been checking in with Sherry Preston, reporting for ABC News Radio Perspective podcast, and sharing what it's like in one of the hardest hit countries. What's happening now is the government is saying that not enough people are staying in. So they have fined about 53,000 people since the beginning of the lockdown, Williams explains. Officials are saying the U.S. is about 10 to 15 days behind Italy. So what can Americans learn from what Italy has experienced so far? The numbers aren't coming down enough, and that may be due to the lack of social distancing. While Williams says it looks like many residents in Rome are following the rules of staying inside, other parts of Italy are not. The Italian government has now threatened to ban all outdoor exercise if people don't start following the rules closely. Right now, people can go out to exercise, like run or walk within their neighborhood, while continuing to comply with the social distancing rules. A new measure has also been added, a questionnaire that locals fill out, signing and sharing whether or not they have been exposed to the virus. There is also continuing concern for those who take multiple trips outdoors daily. I think what they're talking about is people going shopping several times a day. They don't want that. They want people to go, stock up, and not go out for a few days, William explains. Williams said that from her perspective, the anxiety levels in Italy appear to be much lower than in the US. I think it's very hard to wrap your mind around it initially. It is not that people have any more answers here, but I think what's happening is people are settling into the day-to-day routine, she explained. Hospitals working under emergency conditions around the clock and concerns for economic future are all part of the new normal for most of Italy. So Italians kind of have been at the forefront. They're ahead of the curve with how to react to this. They're kind of getting used to being isolated, getting used to it. And Americans are kind of freaking out. They're out buying, packages of toilet paper enough for a year supply and continuing to buy all this stuff, stocking up. Maybe that's a good thing because they're stocking up and doing, getting ready to hunker down. But at the same time, I go get the necessities to get out of the house. We try to stay in our car. We do the drive-through thing to pick up a meal now and again just to get out. But we get out. We're out and about. We're not in crowded places. We try not to go inside stores or restaurants or anything like that, even to pick up food. But we still see people on the road. I drove home from the airport the other day. I am, as an airline pilot, part of that essential crew. I do have to still go to work. And the roads were not the usual traffic, but Southern California freeways were rather full. And I think there's the underlying issue. And Luca, what you're saying is, there's so many things. The fact that you guys are testing everyone, here, you could have a fever, you could have symptoms, but if you don't have a fever, the hospitals aren't going to test you. You're not going to get tested. As a matter of fact, I know an aviator friend of mine who he had the, not feeling well. He had shortness of breath, but he didn't have a fever. So they said, well, just stay at home. If it gets worse, call me. And then he ended up with some relatively strong shortness of breath, and he did get tested, and he's waiting the results now. So, it's kind of scary once you start knowing people.
Yeah, and that there are people that can carry the disease without any symptoms. So that's the scary part as well. And there are many of them, especially the younger people.
Yeah. So when this whole thing starts to settle down, and hopefully that'll happen very soon, what are your thoughts on what the new normal is going to be for at least the aviation community?
It's hard to say. It's very hard to say from my point of view because again, the cargo normally has to go, right? Passenger don't really have to go. This is the way how the freight dog used to describe their job. But I don't really know. I wish I had a crystal ball. That would be nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think more than aviation, I think people will socially will act differently. Aviation wise is I think we will start traveling again. The company will come back. If some of the company will close now, but they will reopen after because people have the need to travel, have to travel for work, they have to travel for vacation and so on. So I don't think it will be the end of it, but maybe we will do it in moderation.
Yeah. Rob, what do you think? Are we going to? I mean, I was reading an article the other day that indicated that one of the international carriers have decided to sell their aircraft and through a leaseback program, keep them flying, but with that cash from the sale of these wide-body aircraft, they were going to use that to keep the company afloat for a minimum of 6 months so that they didn't have to furlough any of their employees because I don't know if it was Korean Air or whatnot. I'll have to look that up. But what do you think, Rob? Are we gonna come out the same way on the backside of this as we were going into it?
Well, that remains to be seen. I don't really know the answer to that question. I can only speculate that this is definitely a new precedence going forward. I'm sure that the major airlines are going to have plans in place going forward for something like this because nobody can sustain another situation like this again in the future. And the only thing to do is to really just to stash cash away and be able to fund your own operation. That's the way I see it. I read an article the other day that Delta Airlines was hemorrhaging $50 million a day just operating in their current environment. $50 million a day is, quite a bit of money. And without a government bailout, I don't know how they or any other airline could stay in business in the current situation. And also, the industry is like the Titanic. It's a kind of a bad metaphor, but, once things once people start to fly again, it's going to be a good 6 to 8 months before things will return to what we know what was normal. It's going to take 6 to 8 months to turn our operation around and ramp it back up, get all the airplanes out of storage, get everybody trained back up. So that costs a lot of money too. Yeah, it's tough to speculate what it's going to be like. I think things are going to return to somewhat of a normal, as far as ops tempo, people booking. It's going to take, I really think it's going to take a good year before all that really returns back. But it's tough to tell. I mean, it all kind of depends on how everybody else in the world is doing. Because, a lot of our business, a lot of our income, I know from a legacy airline standpoint, comes from international travel. So just, going through very small little ups and downs, cyclical stuff in the industry. It's always a year to a year and a half before things, before you see somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel, and you just hope that light at the end of the tunnel isn't another freight train coming at you. Yeah. So,
yeah, in terms of what we were talking about just a moment ago, March 16th, on an article from a website called Simple Flying, and I'll put the information in the show notes. An article by Sumit Rahal indicated that on that day, Cathay Pacific announced that it will sell 6 of its Boeing 777-300ER planes to BOC Aviation. The deal is set to be worth $703.8 million and will help the airline amid the consequences of the COVID-19 outbreak. So what they did is they basically sold these airplanes to BOC Aviation, and then they're going to, lease them back. So they get the cash on hand, and they're able to use that to keep the company afloat, keep as many employees on property as possible. According to planespotter.net, the firm holds 68 Boeing 777s within its fleet. These are accompanied by 36 Airbus A350XWB jets and 20 Boeing 747s. Additionally, several of its 28 Airbus A300s have recently been used for cargo-only flights amid the change in circumstances. Last week, Cathay shared that it will halt flights to Japan amid the travel restrictions that have been placed in that country. So hopefully this is a model that some of the other airlines here in the US might have as an option. I don't know how viable that is, but to do a sell off and lease back program with their jets could generate a lot of cash, at least in the short term, to keep the company afloat, to keep the operation streamlined, and not have to rely on a big government bailout of cash, which is what is on most of the headlines here in terms of aviation news lately. And Roger, you have a couple ideas on economically what this could mean for the airlines. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know how many good ideas. I mean, obviously, I think that just like all pilots, and all pilots with a lot of time, we all come up with a lot of probably dumb ideas or dumb thoughts. I am not an economist. I think that, I think going to what you were just talking about, it sounds good. I think that one of the things that's interesting about it is you still need to find somebody that's willing to take on that capital expenditure in order to shell out almost $1 billion for some airplanes. And that's kind of the thing about this particular event, is that this is a global thing, and who wants to take on a bunch of these airplanes when nobody's going to be flying them. I think that's kind of a little bit of a risky bet for that company that's going to take on that $700+ million, because no one's flying those airplanes. It looks good for Cathay because they get that money in the bank. But, if you wanted to take any of the big three carriers here in the United States, who are you going to go and shop that deal to? I think that the industry is going to come back, and it's going to look a lot of the same way it did before. And I think it's going to look a lot different than it did before. Just because of the way capitalism works and the way that people work. And this is just, again, from a stupid pilot perspective. But I think what's going to happen is, if you look at most of the airlines, they're spending so much of the money on stock buybacks, and that's capitalism, right? You've got a company that brings in this money, and the pilots are going to demand some of the money in profit sharing. So you're going to give some of the money back to the employees, not just the pilots. You're going to give some of that back to the investors or the owners of the company, and you're going to try and invest some of that money into the company. And so the problem with that, while that's all great in capitalism, at the end of the day, something like this illness, this disease, is not something that can ever play into any business in a capitalistic society. And so what's going to happen? Okay, you're going to try and get the government to backstop you, because in this particular case, I don't think that any of the big three airlines or some of the smaller ones are going to be able to survive this without some kind of backstop help that's going to come from the government. And you can look at that, kind of going back to what Rob was talking about. You can stockpile all that money away in case this happens again. But can you imagine? I mean, let's be honest. You guys are pilots, and as you guys work up, you guys are going to be looking at a $50,000 annual check for profit sharing, maybe. And are you guys just going to say, no, that's okay? I want you to, I trust you, the CEOs, to stick this somewhere in some bank account in case we get another virus that's going to absolutely decimate the world or the industry again. That will never happen. Personally, I don't think that will ever happen here in the United States in a capitalistic society. That's just people. That's pilots. That's CEOs. That's investors. That will never happen. And so how this is all going to work out, in the end, when the government and when the taxpayers have to step in, are we going to start, nationalizing things again? No. but are they going to be more regulated? Because at some point, the taxpayers did put the money in to backstop the airlines, and there is going to have to be a little bit of a fundamental change in the way that the airlines work, because they are not like most of the other companies. They are considered quote unquote essential. They are essential. And that's kind of the section that I believe that will come back the way that it was before. People will go back and they will fly. I believe that will happen fairly quickly. I think that a year is definitely more than enough time for that to happen. Again, coming from an uneducated point of view, but I think it will come back. But the industry, the companies themselves will probably look a little bit different, because we did have to put money into it from a government perspective. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because what the airlines do from a global economic standpoint. But at the same time, we have to realize that airlines are different in a capitalistic society, because when this does happen and they do need help, we can't, and we would never really expect them to be able to shovel away tens of billions of dollars just in case this were to happen, because of the speed at which it did happen. It's just not going to be possible. Yeah. Now, what that's all going to look like in the end, I won't even venture to go there. I'm definitely not smart enough to go there. But I think that things are definitely going to look different from an economic and company standpoint for those few reasons.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some safeguards that are going to be put in place in the future from the business side. And it's not just the airlines that are going to have to go through this, because, we've been talking about airlines and pilots and flight crews, but let's just take a moment to really look at who is going to be affected here with this crisis. Okay, so we're talking about airlines and bailouts and whatnot, and let's just say Legacy Airlines or any of its sister companies decides, okay, we're going to stop flying for 30 days. Who does that affect? That affects the airline. Okay, all the employees, hundreds of thousands of employees that are associated, that pull a paycheck from that airline. It's going to affect the cities that are getting money for flying in and out and leasing those gates, that operation. It's going to affect the contracted out ground personnel, the contracted out cabin cleaning, the culinary businesses, the Sky Chefs, and all those other businesses that take care of catering. It's going to take care of the janitorial for the airports. I mean, you look at any of these pictures that are floating around social media right now, the airports are empty. They look like they're abandoned buildings. So there's so many there.
It's far-reaching. It's far-reaching.
Economically,
it's
almost impossible to figure out how many citizens, not just of the United States, but around the world, how many of their citizens are going to be affected if these airlines continue to degrade to the point of collapse, even if it's a temporary collapse. Another bankruptcy, okay, hey, that's a financial thing. That's a financial burden on a major corporation. And a lot of us kind of like, well, okay, that sucks for them. I mean, last week we were talking about how both Compass and Transstates have shuttered their doors because they've lost their contracts with their mainline partners. So, there's 1,000 pilots on the street, but what about all the other employees that they employ? The gate agents, the flight attendants, the mechanics, all their contracted out carriers. This is not just a couple thousand pilots that are affected here. This is, in the tens of thousands for two small carriers. Just think if one of the big carriers in the world starts to be affected to the point of they can't return from this financially, this is going to collapse a world economy if we're not careful, if we don't put these safeguards in place for the future. So, Roger, like you were saying, it's not going to come back the same, but hopefully when it comes back, it'll come back stronger, at least from a business perspective. And that's going to take a lot of time, because anybody that has debt that needs to pay down that debt, it doesn't happen overnight. And to create safeguards so that you don't get into debt in the future takes even longer, and it takes a good strategy.
Yeah, and I think that it kind of depends on what you're looking at it. If you're looking at it from the passenger perspective, I think it'll come back and it won't look much different. And then the part that you're looking at from behind the scenes, I think it will look a whole lot different. But in the end, I don't think that there's going to be any way for you to be able to ever, from just a corporate standpoint, if I'm on the executive management team of Delta Airlines. I don't think that I'm ever going to be able to figure out a way to price tickets, to pay people the way that they want to get paid, and return to stockholders, and shuttle away enough money to be able to actually prevent something like the debt that's going to happen from something like this.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that behind the scenes that things are going to look very, very different.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, Luca, we've I know it's getting kind of late out there. You know, we've kept you on for a while. Is there anything that you can share with us about the outlook that you and your family, while you're there in isolation? I mean, you have any positive stories on how you're coping with all of this?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of positive things as well. The family really to go back and discover that we have time to sit down and read a story with your child, or watch a movie with your child, or talk with your wife a little longer, going to bed only because you're tired after your shift of work and so on.
You're making the rest of us look bad if you're talking to your wife that much more.
Sorry. But I have to say, she's listening. That's why I'm saying this. But no, it's the time that you can use your brain for other stuff. That normally until now, this thing happened. I was into kind of a tunnel. Let me say, if you can pass me a tunnel where you go to work, you come back, you do your little hobbies, and then back again to work, thinking of the work, of the job, blah, blah, blah. It's always the same routine. Having something different like this is, for me, is a positive thing. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's the disease, and unfortunately, there is a bad thing around this thing. And it's I have to be honest, it's difficult to find positive things in a situation like this. But again, I think I'm a positive man, generally speaking. I like to think positive.
Yeah.
And I would like to, since you said before that maybe United States is 2 weeks behind Italy in this crisis, I would like to say, guys, take it seriously. Because again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to react to these things. I just need to listen and do exactly what they say. They're telling me to do. That's it. I think if everybody would think in that way, we would be okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Trust our.
We wish you all the best out there, Luca.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We wish you too the same. I have a question for you guys from the United States, because here in the news that they were saying the other day that not only Tesco and Walmart is being assaulted, but also the guns shops. Is this true?
Absolutely.
Guns are in Texas. Guns are deemed essential, so. Their gun shops, gun stores are open.
Okay, so they have trouble.
I'll find this link. Someone sent me a video of how Texans handle the coronavirus, and there's this group of people. They're at a bus stop, and this poor woman, she's standing there waiting for the bus, and she sneezes, and immediately the other 5 people that surround her whip out their gun, and one of them shoots her, kills her, and then they all spray each other with Lysol. And then they put their guns away and they act like it's normal. That's the way we do things around here in Texas. That's how we do things in Texas. I'll tell you what.
Texas definitely does have gun ownership in their blood, but it's a national thing. Even out here in California, where they do everything that they can to tamp down gun ownership and ammo sales, we still have lines out the door even out here. It's a national thing, and it is very real, the run on guns and ammo.
But why is that? To protect yourself from corona, or to protect yourself?
I blame The Walking Dead. the zombie movies. Everyone's worried about the apocalypse, and in the end, it's don't take my toilet paper.
Yeah, it's certainly
Yeah.
It's definitely a self-defense and
we didn't want anybody seeing that.
Property defense.
Yeah. Well, what's happening here is, it hasn't happened so far that we've seen, but the looting was the biggest fear. Because if everybody's stuck in their house and they're like, well, hey, nobody's at the electronics store, I can go and get myself a big screen TV. So then they go break a window and steal. So they're very afraid that is where society will go when the stress level gets so high and people just start to going, well, now I don't have any food. I don't have any toilet paper. My neighbor's got a garage full of toilet paper and food. I'm going to go to my neighbor's house. Matter of fact, there was a funny meme the other day. One neighbor had a shopping cart full of toilet paper and canned goods, and the other neighbor barely had anything except for a box of ammo. And he says, why didn't you stock up? He's like, I don't need to. You got everything. He's like, yeah, but that's mine. He goes, yeah, but I've got a gun.
Exactly.
I think it comes back to the whole fear. It's the fear thing, is that people go to the stores, they don't have the necessities that they need, they get fearful, they worry about running out, and so how can I acquire this stuff? And because America is so individualistic and we're so standing up for our rights, standing up for ourselves, and well, how can I go about getting this stuff? And sometimes we go down to this slightly violent route. A little bit. I had a friend that said, the three things: alcohol, cigarettes, and ammo. Those are the three things that you can trade for in an apocalypse, right? Yeah. Whether that's trading it or whether it's using it. But I think that just America is a little bit different in that individual pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and gun ownership and ammo seems to go along with that hand in hand.
And there seems to be a common theme as well, especially in some of the communities in the south part of the country, is that I've got to have my firearm to protect myself from my own government, because my own government is not going to protect me. I need to protect me. So there's a big sense of no one's going to be looking out for me but me. I don't trust anyone but me. And when it comes down to it, who's going to protect my family? Is it the police officer who's got a family of their own, who's supposed to protect me from people looting my property or coming in to hurt my family in a time of crisis? Or am I going to protect my family? And I think that's where the mentality comes in, because geographically, look at America. It's huge. This continent is absolutely huge. So geographically, we're spread out. You pull out the major cities like New York and LA and Chicago, where people are stacked on top of the other. For the most part, most Americans live out in the country. They live out in a suburban area where there's not much going on, and you're not going to have a cop at your door in under a minute. Okay, so if something happens, there's going to be a large time lapse, and if you live in a 2-horse town, and the zombies come over from California and they come over the river to come get my stuff, you're going to arm yourself. And I can understand that. It's not just about hunting and whatnot. It's there because of a fear to protect yourself. And that is part of what, is in the Constitution. The right
and like
to bear
Tony
arms.
just said, it's like we're bred from the very beginning to not trust the government, and I think that's just something that we have here. No one else is going to protect you. The government's not going to protect you, and so you got to protect yourself and go buy a gun.
And as we're talking here, Luca's sending me a video of all of the goodies he has, and I'm looking at fresh cut meat, toilet paper, and pasta. The pasta shelves are empty. Empty. I can't even buy this shitty pasta right now. Not even the. You're look at this. This is amazing.
Yeah, but you have to hear that video. You have to hear it.
Yeah, you want me to play it?
I know it's too long, bro.
Okay,
I don't know.
okay.
You can take a look
I'll
at it.
Take a look at that for sure.
There are so many. There are so many. I had so many friends during this time that they were sending funny videos with the coronavirus and not corona and blah blah blah. It was just because we have so much time now in our hands that we can actually get more social with the others, with the friends. Here another good point, that we can spend a little bit more time with friends as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe not face to face, but like we are doing now.
From a distance.
Exactly. Well, at least a 1 yard.
I have a question.
Man.
I have a question for you guys, for Anthony and from Rob. Maybe this is just because I'm lazy, but if I'm a pilot, at Legacy Airlines, and I'm sick, I just turned 62, and they're offering a retirement where you get 55 hours and you don't, and you retire, but they're still going to pay you 55 hours for another 3 years.
60% of your pay for 3 years.
Who in the world would not take that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I kind of understand both sides of the story on this. And for instance, I mean, I fly with a lot of guys that are in that age group on the 737, and a lot of these guys are basically products of all the mergers, furloughs, 9/11 kind of thing. And there's a lot of guys that are just turning 62, 63 that only upgraded captain maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And then their previous pay scales were really low. I mean, we're at I forget what we're at now, Tony. I'm year 3 or year 2?
I'm on year 2.
160 or something like that. Those guys were only at like $80 an hour max up until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
As an FO, and a lot of those guys never really had a chance to recoup from the past cyclical downturns in the industry. So a lot of them really are not ready financially to retire. A lot of guys that I fly with are actually going to be looking for second jobs. Now on the heavy side, guys flying the heavies, those guys, if they're captains, they've been making a lot of good money for a while, because usually if you're flying a heavy, and remember, age has nothing to do with seniority. So, if you're flying a heavy, you're senior, especially if you're on the captain side. So if you're captains flying a heavy, you've probably been there for a little while. You're probably making some pretty good money, and you're probably ready to retire. And a lot of those guys already only fly, as it is, 55 hours. Or maybe even less.
Right, because they're only working 9 days a month or so.
Right.
Yeah. So so for folks like that, I think a lot of those guys might consider that. But it's hard to put yourself in everybody's shoes. It's our airline particularly has been through obviously all the mergers, and within that, when they were separate airlines, they come from the 3 or 4 different airlines before that separately. And a lot of those guys have taken a real beating financially and career progression. And here we are, we find ourselves in this situation. They just may not be ready to go. So I don't know. I personally can't afford to even take a short-term leave of absence. I mean, I would love to do it. But
that's obviously a very different story. I'm more like so I just looked it up on Airline Pilot Central, and I'm looking at just the top of the pay scale for a captain is $278 for a 12-year captain on a 737, which means that even even at only 7 bid periods, which is just roughly 60%. I mean, that's still almost $150,000 a year, and you don't even need to show up to work for 3 years.
Yeah, those guys probably only been a captain for a couple years.
Right.
Yeah, and when you have 3 ex-wives and 7 houses and a sports car, and
so many.
And I understand, obviously, like you said, Rob, you can't put everyone in the same category. I'm just from a large from 15,000 pilots or something.
Yeah, 15 plus. Yeah.
I mean, how many of those guys have been captains for? I mean, a lot of those guys have had to been a captain for.
Not
you guys
true.
have a lot of junior captains.
We do. We do. The senior captains have all getting ready to retire. I mean, mind you, we've had hundreds of retirements every year, and it's ramping up to 300s,
Right.
you know, in the 300 and 400 mark every year. So there's definitely that going on where a lot of them have retired, getting ready to retire. Some people, you know, I thought it was going to be a majority of the 777 guys that were going to retire, and the A350
that's
guys.
who I see taking it.
But now I got an email this morning with a graph, and it shows 150 Airbus A320 captains have put in for their early out.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys too that flew international heavies that weren't very senior, you know, as captains, or even very senior FOs that you know are flying Group 2, which would be, you know, the Airbus and the 737. So those guys are you know, obviously senior captains in the respective groups, but you know they
Don't
were
have the time.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
the left seat.
As
Yep.
of this morning, 563 pilots have put in for their permanent early out.
That's good.
So that's
going to
actually-
help out a lot.
That's pretty good, actually.
And there was an
Overall.
article about it in the Dallas Star that I kind of skimmed over earlier. But yeah, 80 captains on the 777, 30 FOs put in for it. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you look
Wow.
at the numbers of the FOs, you would think that there wouldn't be that many over 62, but there's actually quite a few. 30 777 FOs, 30 787 FOs, 20 A330 FOs.
Yeah.
And I thought more 7.6 drivers would put in for it, but as of this morning, only 30 captains and 5 FO, because the 75, 76
Yeah.
effective immediately are going to be parked. And they're just
Yeah.
early parking in the air. They were going to retire them anyway because their total time on the airframe was
Right.
getting high. But now
Yeah.
they're parking these 75, 76s at Legacy
Yeah.
Airlines, and
And I know-
you know,
I know a lot of those guys, the junior guys at least, came from the Super 80. You know, so
mhm. And-
whatever that really means, it's just I think they're, you know, 20 years in the right or left seat on the Super 80 going to the 75, 76.
yeah,
And now they're
I mean, I look at things a little bit, I guess, slightly differently. Because I fully admit that I'm lazy, and if somebody's going to pay me $150,000 a year to do nothing, but even then, looking past that, for a lot of these guys, who I am assuming, I mean, let's make the assumption that they have done either in the right seat or the left seat. They've done multiple transoceanic crossings, lots of international
Yeah.
flights, and the amount of work that will be out there for guys
Yeah.
with that kind of experience.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously I fly in, you know, the private, the GA sector. The demand for those kind of guys with that experience to just sit in the right seat of any kind, you could pull that paycheck, and I'm assuming the benefits from Legacy Airlines, and then go make, you know, another six figures flying when you want, where you want.
also.
Even
Yeah.
though that's taking my
Also-
work away from me.
yeah.
Also, you just reminded me that the guys retiring also would, you know, soon start drawing from their 401k, which I don't know if you noticed, by the way, has tanked in the last couple weeks. So, you know, they would literally lose hundreds of thousands of dollars just 401k wise. So, you know, where financially they're, you know,
That's a
on
personal
one side or the
decision on
other,
what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Because I think that if you're going
and
to
if they
retire,
keep working,
if you're going to retire, you need to assume that you're not going to be pulling from that 401k, because there's no way that you want to be pulling money out of the market now from your retirement. You're just going to want
Right.
to survive on the 60%.
Yeah, that's a very common and big
that's
mistake.
the thing. A lot of guys are. Yeah, that's.
Right.
But I think that's the problem. A lot of guys are dealing with is the A fund has been frozen,
Right.
so they have that, but is that enough to sustain their $300,000 a year lifestyle?
Right.
And then you got your tanked 401k, and then also 55 hours a month. A lot of these guys that I fly with, they're kind of like me. I need to be at 85 hours a month or so at my captain pay, Group 2 captain pay, to make it to 401k wise, retirement wise, and daily lifestyle wise, just to be there. So a 55 hour a month parachute is a small parachute. They might crash upon landing.
And personally, they have to be in a good position to be able to afford a pay reduction. A lot of people, especially in the U.S., they're living pretty close to paycheck because they've got these huge houses and brand new. When's the last time you saw an old car on the road? I mean, it's a classic. It's like your car's more than 10 years old. It's like a clunker. I drive vehicles. Both of them are over 10 years old and paid off, and they've been paid off. Hey,
absolutely.
So
the 2007 Toyota.
There you go. You got a new car, buddy. I had 2002 and 2004.
You're just breaking it in right now. That's all.
If you don't have 300,000 miles, we're not even going to have this discussion.
That's what she said.
What do you have?
Oh, man.
I said, if you don't have 300,000 miles, we're not having this discussion.
Yeah. That's what she said.
Oh, man.
So in all this, in the wake of everything that's happening over at Legacy Airlines, they really were giving us many of the sanitizing wipes, the alcohol wipe tablet things where you rip open the pouch and there's a little napkin in there. It's full of alcohol, and it's to wipe down the cockpit. And they were rationing those things out. They initially said, well, we're going to give you like 15 of these a day, and they should be enough to clean the cockpit before you get in there and wipe down all the controls and everything, and also enough to clean out the oxygen mask, because especially on a lot of the flying that I do that's 4 or 5, even 6 hours long, you're going to take a bathroom break, a physiological break in flight, 1 or 2 every couple hours. I usually have a 2-hour bladder depending on how many cups of coffee I've had during the flight. But so we had to clean out the mask and don the oxygen mask anytime you're above flight level 250 as part of the FAR regulation. If one pilot leaves his or her station, the other pilot must don the oxygen mask. Well, this was creating quite a lot of controversy with, hey, I'm going to catch corona because I'm putting on this oxygen mask, and who knows what the pilot before me, if he was asymptomatic and had it, and now, even if I clean it, maybe I didn't clean it well enough, and maybe I'm going to get it. So the FAA had been talking about getting rid of this requirement because they're saying with the modern technology and the quick donning oxygen mask that we have in the airplanes available to us, you really don't need to put it on, because they've never had an incident where during that exchange it was required. So in a email that we got just yesterday over at Legacy Airlines, effective immediately, 14 CFR 121.333 subpart Charlie, part 2, part India, part Alpha indicates that the use of the O2 mask above flight level 250 when the pilot leaves his or her station has changed. Effective immediately, pilots are not required to don an O2 mask on our aircraft when one pilot leaves his or her station and the aircraft is at or below flight level 410. However, the regulation still requires that one pilot to always wear the O2 mask whenever operating above flight level 410. So in an effort to minimize the potential for cross-contamination, they have removed this FAR literally overnight. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. Oh, they're getting rid of this rag. It's a wasted rag, and half the people don't wear it. But if you have an FAA jump seater, they'll violate you if you don't put it on and wear it appropriately the whole time and all this. And so it's been a back and forth debate amongst the pilot community. And now, effective immediately, you no longer have to wear the O2 mask when the other pilot goes to the bathroom below 410.
Good.
Do you even have that in Italy? Same reg?
No, the regulation was the same. Plus, we have when one of the pilots leaves the station, has to be substituted by a flight attendant. So somebody has to be in the cockpit together with the single pilot. Yeah.
Yeah, we have that.
But they actually, I forgot to tell you to mention that before. But some of the authorities in Europe, where we are going under the EASA regulation, which is the FARs, the United States FARs, let's say. But the EASA regulations, we are all the European countries in it, but each country can deliberate different rules within the states. So today I received Ireland authorities extend the licenses. Let's say that in this period your license will expire. That I had to go for the renewal of the license, the LPC or the OPC and so on. And you can still operate with your license expired now. And same thing about the medical. So if it's expiring these days, I don't know the window, but I think it's up to the end of May, for what I recall. So until the end of May, all the pilots they have the licenses expiring, medical or flying license. They can carry on with their in some of the country, not in all of them, but in some of them.
Have you heard anything about that here?
No.
Tony?
What?
No, I haven't.
Because I've kind of wondered, like, if I had to go renew my medical right now, that would be the farthest thing that I wanted to do.
Right.
Like with doctor's offices or trying to even make an appointment just to renew my medical so that I could actually legally do my job. And I've kind of wondered if there would be some relief. Like, I guess you were just saying that Europe might have something started with that, because the last thing I want to do right now is have to worry about going to a doctor's office to get my medical renewed.
Yeah. Well, I guarantee you that's going to be a situation that comes up here, because in the U.S., our medical expires at the end of the month. And we have now been in this reduction of flying for a little bit over 2 weeks. So any pilot this month that has a medical certificate that is going to expire at the end of March could potentially not be legal to fly. And until that starts to happen, I really don't know if those kind of regulations will appear here in the U.S. as well with the FAA to give a waiver to a pilot whose maybe their license or their qualification or their medical certificate has expired within this period of what we're calling the COVID crisis. I'd be interested to see if the U.S. follows suit as some of the European partners to extend a waiver of legality to pilots who have accumulated an expired license because they can't get in to either get requalled, or an expired medical because they can't get in to see an FAA medical doctor. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens here in the near future. Well, gentlemen, it has been an absolute honor to be able to look at all of you through this conference Skype call that we have going on here, and to have a discussion about how this COVID-19 crisis is affecting our journeys in aviation, the airline industry from our perspective. And, what a treat to be able to all have schedules right now where we don't have to be out there, punching the clock, and we can have these kind of discussions. So I want to thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on, Tony.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes episode 34 of Squawk Ident. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of all of us here at Squawk Ident and the Squawk Ident crew to thank all the frontline workers out there doing their part to keep us all safe in the wake of all of what's going on. Thank you to the doctors, the nurses, the medical techs, the pharmacists, and all the other essential workers out there that show up every day to work and do their part. I truly do hope that you are enjoying Squawk Ident Podcast. If you'd like to visit our website, you can find us at www.aviatortony.com. That's Alpha, Victor, the number 8, Romeo, Tango, Oscar, November, Yankee.com. There you can check out episode cover art, episode archives, the pilot shop, and you can leave audio feedback as well. You can also contribute to the show and help us out with equipment, software expenses, and marketing expenses as well by becoming a producer of Squawk Ident, either with a one-time or monthly contribution. And now, check out the Flightline Photos tab. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter users can also search Squawk Ident Podcast or Aviator Tony and Squawk Ident to follow on the socials. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you like what you hear, we'd really appreciate if you could just spend a moment and leave us a review, a like, and a share. In closing, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this grateful aviator. Keep the dirty side down out there, be safe, and most importantly, take care of each other.